Okay, this is the Sausage Sports Club Weekly Update. Let me turn down this chill hop radio. Okay, so this is the Sausage Sports Club Weekly Update. I do this every week for 4 reasons. One, I think it's, I guess first what it is, I just go over what I did this week and how I'm feeling about the game and how close I am to finishing the game, and I'm just trying to show my process and what I do every week and what I think about as I'm doing it. The 4 reasons I do this: 1, I think it's a useful resource for students and new developers. I wish I'd had this kind of resource of seeing, the steps of making a commercial indie game, and I didn't, and so I want to pay it forward. 2 is the obvious marketing reason of it's good to talk about the game all the time so that people have like regular content to come out. It's just me making the game, so I don't have like some kind of marketing team or regular content other than just me making the game and sharing that. 3 is a selfish reason of like in 5 or 10 years or whatever, it would be cool to look back on my process of making the game and see like, oh, this is when I learned that thing, or oh, I used to do that cool thing that like it would be good to do now, or even like, oh, remember when I did that stupid thing. And then the 4th new reason is that often in chat people will join and see that I'm doing something in a stupid way and then tell me that it's stupid, and then I learn a new thing and I'm better at making games, so that's cool. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. I've got my list here of everything I did this week, or the stuff I'm going to talk about doing this week. So most of this week was spent messing with the overworld and adding the new kind of Hollywood biome. The biome has existed before, but I've been adding new stuff to it, and I'll start by just jumping in and talking about what's new. A relatively new thing is that the Hollywood section has several movie sets. Let me get rid of the bots. I don't need them. So what's relatively new is that the structure of the Hollywood section is that there's one big Western set, because that's like an obvious movie set, and then on either side of the back of the Hollywood area there's like production, kind of like what you expect a Hollywood production lot to be, next to the movie set. And then within the Western set, which is made up of like saloon looking buildings or like an inn or whatever. Jump down. Yeah, and then within each of these there's like another movie set on the interior, and this week I figured out what those are gonna be. Just slammed my hand on my desk. I figured out what those are going to be and started fleshing those out. And just as a little disclaimer, the lighting in this scene is all temp. I had to break it so that I could continue making stuff today, like just before the stream actually. Ooh, this looks bad. That's interesting. Wonder what that hitch was. Yeah, so the 3 sets on the inside, obviously they're all temp. This is like in progress, not done art. This one's going to be a music venue. There's going to be instruments on the stage that you can smack with your face and they'll play it. There'll be like an electric guitar riff or acoustic guitar riff, or each of the different parts of the drum kit will play sounds, and then each like chunk of the keyboard will play a different kind of like mashing of a set of keys sound. And then there's like physics stools, and I won't talk about what is going to be in here. I guess I'll just show what is here, and then I'll come back at the end and talk about what I'm doing now and what's next. This one's going to be like a moon landing kind of set, and it's got low gravity if you hit that button, and I still need to add VFX for like So there's feedback of how that works. But when that's on, anything that's in this room is like low gravity mode. Boom, like this stuff. And you can also like take stuff in and out of these rooms, and like, so I can take this rock out and now it's like normal gravity again. Or I could take a barrel in here and make that hit the button again, and now that'll be low gravity. It's I think this might be a feedback issue, but it's a little confusing when you leave and come back in to the moon part, that you have to like restart the low gravity. Not sure if that's where I want it to be or not. There's these little pits that you can just like put your whole body into. Had fun making these. These were actually something I thought of like a whole year ago when I first came up with the idea of the overworld and brainstormed a bunch of toys. This was like one that I wanted to do. You can like step on your head and fall on top of it. It's kind of hard to do though. Oh yes, this is the moon landing movie set. And then this one's going to be a castle. There's not really much yet. Just like this kind of gross looking texture. And obviously it'll look better when it's baked. I won't talk about what's going to be in there yet. So going back to my list, that's kind of like the I would say the majority of my time this week has been spent like making those 3 rooms possible and like adding that amount of stuff to those rooms. But looking at my list, let's see what else happened. So a lot of that was kind of not showy, showable stuff, but more like a little bit of housekeeping. This scene view. So actually setting up this scene, give a little context. Actually setting up this scene, you might one way of doing it is to make a separate model for each thing and then import them separately and then arrange them all in the scene. Rather than doing that, what I tend to do is yeah, I'm done with this scene. What I tend to do is build one scene in Maya as a blockout and then export the entire thing as one thing, and then in Unity then that's all like placed, like everything's placed together. I don't need to worry about like placing it again and make sure everything's like aligned. And that's an easier workflow for me, so that's what I do. But eventually if you do that for long enough and just keep adding stuff to it, you might have like, I don't know, like 500 models in a scene, and you might have like 500,000 polygons or something. These aren't actual numbers of where I hit, but the point is eventually if you do that and you don't like take care to make sure your scene is like that all your meshes are like deleted history as possible and that everything's organized and has good names, you're eventually going to end up with this huge scene that's just like very crusty. And like another thing I did was I would like the hat, sometimes I would start a model in that scene and then export it and start like putting in its own asset, but then work on it in there and use that in the actual scene. But then in the overworld like big scene, I wouldn't delete the hat shop there, and so there was still like that old crusty thing, and in Unity I would just like disable it instead of actually deleting it from the mesh, so it would still be getting imported every time. The point is basically I had been working in this one scene for the entire overworld, and that was good for my workflow until eventually I was like too focused on working from the scene and jumping back and forth, and eventually that became slow because I wasn't taking good care of the scene, and I wasn't like breaking stuff up properly. It's not a huge deal, and I would do it the same if I could again. Like I wouldn't change anything because it didn't take very long to clean up the scene, and I knew I was going to need to do it eventually, so it's really fine. It was just like a thing I had to spend time doing this week to make it so importing the overworld didn't take like, I don't know, like 30 seconds. That's too long. What was the point I was trying to make with that? Oh yeah, so I split up these buildings into their own files. These are really where I started to hit like, oh my gosh, this overworld scene is so crusty. I need to fix it up. And so I split those out, and now they're their own thing. I don't know why I'm still in play mode. So each one of these buildings is their own thing, and I can work on them separately. And I would say this was really necessary for these buildings specifically, because there's weird stuff going on with them. And that required me putting them in their own files so I could keep track mentally of all the weird stuff going on, without also including every other sub-mesh in the overworld. So let me show you what some of that weird stuff is. We can start with the moon landing. Okay. So I'll walk through what all these pieces are here in a second, but first I want to like go into play mode and show you what's going on. The cool thing about the Hollywood movie sets, like the interiors, is that they're bigger than the building is. If that makes sense, like they're bigger on the inside than they are on the outside. So if I go into the movie set, like take a look at this building, note how like tall it is on the outside, and then on the inside it becomes much bigger, obviously. And this was when I started this, this idea of doing interiors. This was something I thought would probably be necessary, but was worried about and didn't want to like spend time on if I didn't have to. But when I made this moon landing, it was immediately very fun and like easily readable as a moon landing, and obvious as like a movie set, so it helps sell the theme of the overall like Hollywood section. So I knew I had to keep it, and this moon landing necessitates this mechanic of like the high jump, the low gravity thing. And once I did that, when the building was this low roof, like, regular sized building, you would jump and then immediately hit the ceiling when you do this high jump thing. And before I actually had set up the building to work properly, you would just go through the ceiling and end up on the roof of the outdoor building. That was like not what I wanted. So I had to make the buildings bigger on the inside than the outside. And that's where all this the weird stuff in my model comes in. So if we look at this building, but before I get into the breakdown of the building, actually, I want to talk about the fade effect too. Or sorry, the indoor effect. So when you're inside of this building, you can see that the outside is like black. It goes to black and you can't see anything. Oh. And this is more obvious in the other buildings since there's like less wall. The reason I wanted this. Hi, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for coming by. I've been working on this game for since October. It's 2018 now. Since October 2015, I think, is when I started working on it as my main project. Is that right? Let's see. I actually have a record of it. I think it's been about 2.5 years. Or a little under 2.5 years. Oh, welcome, Fudge. Nice. I like that Poppin' Pals game. Anyway, let me finish explaining this indoor mask thing, and then I'll hang out and chat a bit. Yeah, so this mask effect on the outside of the building where everything becomes black except the building was really important to me because the interior needs to be the focus. Otherwise you get, on screen, you get this mix of like the Western set exterior and then like some other set interior, and it looks really weird, and like it's like there's a castle inside the Wild West or whatever, and it's just like not clear what's going on. So I knew I needed that mask effect. And so that's also part of the like weirdness of the building mesh, is like I have to define what part of the screen gets masked to black and what part doesn't. So that's another piece there. And you can see here, like, I can't use my finger. You can see where my mouse is. There's like a little bit of a exit kind of quad there. And that's on purpose so that you can see where am I supposed to exit this building. I could have easily made the mask also cover that part, but I want players to be able to see like where to go to get out. Not sure what's going on here, like why you can see that. You shouldn't be able to. I guess that's the ground. Yeah, I'll fix that. Thanks, Alex. So those are the two requirements. One, I need the interior to be bigger than the exterior, and two, I need the mask to like define what part is masked. You know, what part becomes black when you're inside and what part is just rendered normally. So that's why I need to have this weird stuff on my model. You know, I'll go into that, but is the black background final, or is it going to have per interior backgrounds? That's an interesting idea. I might do like a lot of the game's UI has these like scrolling patterns. I can like that, this background as it's loading. I'll jump to the menu just so you can see. We've got the scrolling dots here, or like in the main menu. What do I want? Free play. Yeah, so the background here has the scrolling patterns, and the character tiles have the scrolling patterns. So that's like my UI. What do you call it? Not rule. That's the well I keep going to when I design UI is like, I know I want everything to be cohesive, and to do that I'll just use these patterns. So it might make sense for me to have like, for the moon, maybe it's like a purple background with a scrolling lighter purple pattern. Maybe for the castle it could be like brown or like wood kind of color for the background, and the music venue could be I don't know, red or green or blue or something. That's a cool idea though, that I hadn't thought of, that your question made me think of. I don't hate the black background though. If I don't get to that polish kind of feature, having a different background, that would be fine. Okay, let me go back into these models of the buildings. So this building is split up into several pieces. This one's a little bit more complicated. So the building has several parts. The base of the building, like the part I know I want to always be there, I put on one layer and just call it building layer or whatever. And this has all of the stuff that is kind of static, like all of these colliders always will remain on, or it's not really the right way to explain it. I'll say this is like the default layer. If this stuff doesn't have to do any weird masking, or doesn't have to disappear or something, this is the layer I'll put it on. If it's a mask, if it's on the mask layer, this is the part that defines what can be drawn you know, when I go into the building, this is the mask that defines what can be drawn by the what actually gets drawn instead of being black. That's the idea. Oh no, we got a crash. So sick. Let me open Maya again. We can just wait. And then the other layer was the roof layer, and this is the stuff that's kind of the front and top of the building. This is gonna fade away so that we can see into the building. That's the idea. And since creating it that way with that roof on a separate layer, I've kind of went a little bit farther even and made it so other pieces can fade away besides the roof. Like these boxes, I put a component on that will fade out these boxes, and going even farther than that, I had to add to that fade component that if an object is faded out, then it can specify colliders to disable. So when this box fades out, like previously, this box was set to fade out, but if you turn low gravity on and then jump yourself on top of it, you could just like stand on top of that box, and that wasn't right. Yeah, Autodesk products, so good. Okay, let's grab that. Hey, thanks, Owly Loop. Welcome. Thanks for the compliment. Yeah, so the roof is the part that will fade away. The mask is the part that we use to decide what gets masked out. And the way that mask works, if you weren't here for the stream where I talked about that, the mask has a special shader on it that writes to the stencil buffer and says for every pixel that this mesh occupies, write into the stencil buffer a specific number. And the stencil buffer is just like, imagine the entire screen, but every pixel you can define or not define an arbitrary number. So by default, maybe it's always 0. Like entire screen, imagine every pixel is a 0. And for our mask, we say at every pixel where this mesh, you know, occupies the screen, put a 50 or a 2 or whatever, you know, a 50 is fine. And then when we go to draw the entire screen, we draw the entire scene, and then we do an image effect, which is, you know, a shader that runs over the entire screen. We use the stencil buffer there to say if there's a 50 in our stencil buffer on this pixel, you know, just draw as normal, and if there's not a 50, then draw black, and that's how that mask works. So that's that. Yeah, so a lot of my time this week is figuring out, okay, how do I make this bigger on the inside than the outside? How do I fade these things properly? You know, running into the collision, like jumping on that box like I mentioned. There's one thing that I still haven't like solved. I mean, I've solved it in my head, but when I implement it, it's probably gonna have like issues I didn't expect. And that's that the interiors of these buildings need to have different lighting from the overworld. While all of the overworld right now is lit with one directional light. Let me collapse all this shit. UI root. T:\light. I don't know why I'm showing you the light, it doesn't really matter. All of the overworld is lit using this light, and I bake light maps, which means I spit out a bunch of textures that the whole scene uses to have really nice looking lighting at runtime, rather than every frame calculating shadows for everything and doing all these lighting calculations. You know, you just bake it offline, it's saved in textures, it only takes like 150 megabytes of video memory, and that's fine. And that's it's way better. Like it looks better and it runs better. It's great. But one limitation of that, at least thus far, is that you can only use one. How do I explain this? The way I've set it up so far is that my one directional light affects everything in the scene, and when it bakes, I bake everything's lighting into those textures with one light. What needs to happen is each one of these interior sets needs to bake their lighting using its own light, which means during the actual bake step in the overworld, I need to change the layer of everything in the music venue to be like, you know, light bake layer 1, and then set my light that I use, all the lights that I'll use in the music venue, to be only light objects on this layer, and you know, do that for the other two buildings too. Then bake lighting. Then once that's done, undo it, because you know, all of the objects in the music venue rely on the layer system to you know, resolve physics collisions as well, which is kind of a kink in Unity's system of, you know, physics layers and render layers are the same. But so I as I'm explaining, I have this worked out in my head. I just need to do it, like write a tool so that I can do a drop down that's like sausage soccer bake overworld lighting, and then it will just do that for me, so that I don't have to manually go through and like change the layers and remember to change them all back. Whew. So that's a thing. Hi, how's it going, everyone? This is my first commercial indie game that I'm making personally, but I've been working in Unity professionally for like three and a half years, something like that. I did a bunch of contract programming on games like Manifold Garden and Battle Chef Brigade, and I now work at Alchemy Lab. My day job now is Alchemy Labs, who makes Job Simulator and the Rick and Morty VR game. So, and all those projects use Unity, so I've worked in a lot of big projects in Unity. But this is, you know, my first project that's very, you know, that's commercial. Okay, let's keep working through this list. So I kind of already showed concert venue, I showed the moon setup, I showed that. Let's do audio transition. Something that's been on my to-do list forever, as long as the overworld has existed probably, is as you move between the different biomes of the overworld, the music should transition to be the, you know, that biome's theme that you're in. Can you hear? I'll turn this up for now, but I'll turn it back down. Oh. And I do want to reiterate, I'll probably say this a few more times through the stream, but all of this lighting is temp and it looks real bad. So don't at me about the bad lighting. What am I doing? I need to go to adventure, go to last day. Let's be Peck. And not that this matters. Fedora. Fish. Yeah. So in the overworld, there's the 4 biomes: the jungle, beach, desert, and Hollywood. There's also the hub, which is like the, you know, the center of the wheel. The overworld is the wheel. And we have a different version of the theme for each biome. So when you walk into each biome, or the theme should transition to match. So we do this. speech version. There's no voice acting in the game. There's dialogue, but if you talk to characters, this is the kind of voice you have. It's kind of Animal Crossing-ish. And there's sometimes emotes. I guess that dialogue didn't have any emotes, but the emotes have kind of like sound effects. So there's no voice acting. It's just the blah 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 blah. Thanks. All the music is Tom Duncan. He was also the composer for Battle Chef Brigade. Here's the jungle version. It's got the marimbas. Button over here. Hate that texture on top of these. Oh, okay. Yeah, voice acting would be really cool, but there's not. I just don't have a budget for it, and if you're gonna do voice acting, you should actually do good voice acting with real voice actors. So I'm gonna do it for this game. Oh, I was just showing the music transition. Okay. I'm gonna exit. Exit that quest in the middle. Okay. So yeah, the overworld music transitions, that had been on my to-do list for like a whole year, and I just kept putting it off because I couldn't think of, like every time I would see that, I would spend like 10 seconds like, how would I do that? And then I wouldn't think of an obvious answer, so I didn't do it. And eventually it became like high enough on my priority list where I spent more time than that and figured it out. Yeah, I spent, I don't want to think about how much time I spent on the trees, but trees have been, in the jungle have been this like big plaguing issue for a long time. And if you have worked on video games, you might know that jungles are like a stupid thing to put in your game because having a bunch of trees is required to make a jungle feel like a jungle, and having a bunch of trees usually requires a lot of overdraw of like every time there's a transparent pixel, if you draw another transparent pixel on top of that and another one and another one and another one, every time you do another one you have to draw that pixel again, you know, whereas with a opaque objects, you only have to do it once unless the pixel you're drawing is in front of the thing you already drew, if that makes sense. Like if I've drawn, let's say I've drawn this tree right in front of me first, every tree behind that, when we get to this pixel to draw, we can skip that pixel because we know like, oh, this other thing is already in front of me, I don't need to draw this pixel. When everything's transparent, which is usually the case for trees, because usually what you do for a tree is, I can show you on these guys. Usually there's like little fine details along the edges, and you don't want to model those in because you'll have like a crazy high poly shape. So you just like paint it into a texture and do like an alpha cutoff. But if you have if you have like 20 trees overlapping on the same thing, you'll have to draw those pixels 20 times. And if that's like 50% of the screen, then you're drawing 50% of the screen 20 times. And suddenly your game can't run on the Nintendo Switch. So I've been, for the last like 3 months, I've been fighting to keep all of these trees I haven't changed how the jungle looks at all to suit optimization. It looks just as good as it did at first. It runs a lot better now, but I still have work to do. And I spent time this week on that as well. This week's breakthrough was, oh, if I just model in the polygons instead of using transparency, then I can skip that overdraw I was talking about. But now there's 100 trees and they all have 2,000 polygons, so that's every time they're on screen, that's every time you're looking at the jungle, that's 200,000 polygons. And to improve my iteration time, I got rid of my level of detail changes. So now, like, no matter how far away you are from the jungle, all of them are always at full res. So now, instead of my bottleneck being overdraw, my bottleneck is now there's, depending on what angle you're looking at, what you're looking at in the game, there might be like 200,000+ more polygons to look at. And really, it's even more than that, because these things are also, all the plants in the jungle contribute to that poly count. Hi, how's it going, everyone? The Switch version has been awesome, except for optimization. Optimization has been really hard, both in like the rendering side and the CPU side. Like this game is a physics game, and if you have 8 players running around at once, that's 8 times like all the player calculations, and it's really heavy. So I've had to do a lot of work. I've probably spent like a month full-time's work just optimizing. It might even be more than that now, because I'm still doing it. So it's really tough, but it's only tough because I made a stupid game. Like I should, if I knew I was going to be on Switch, I wouldn't have made this game. So it's not hard for everybody. If you're making a 2D game, the Switch is, an easy platform to port to. Let's move on. I don't need to spend so much time talking about trees. I did some work on the docks over here. I don't like the way they turned out, but doing this update to the model gave me some ideas about how they should look. Looking up real docks, you don't really see docks that are this rounded U shape. And you also don't tend to see docks that, if I put a character over here, you also don't tend to see docks that have wood planks that are so thin. Like if I stood facing forward on a dock, the planks would probably be, you can't see my feet, but they would probably be like this. If they're super long that way, they're probably this deep. They're like pretty deep. And these are all really small, so it feels wrong. And the U feels wrong. So what I'm going to do is make straight on dock there, straight on dock here, and then a 90-degree turn where the wood panels are not also 90 degrees turned. So I think that's going to look better. That's another one of those things. It's been on my to-do list forever. Same with this one. Okay, fixes and improvements. There was a bug that I showed last week on stream, or maybe it was during the work session on Monday or Tuesday or whatever, where, especially in adventure mode, especially with NPCs, especially during dialogue, the player's rotation, like the facing direction that they look while they talk, was fucked up. They would, every time they would talk, they would kind of turn to a new position that didn't really make, or a new rotation that didn't make sense. And the main player would constantly be like spinning around, doing weird shit. And that is now fixed. The thing that was happening was I made an optimization to how players move around, and when whenever, like every frame for every player, if their left stick, you know, if their virtualized left stick is pointing in any direction, their target direction, like the direction they want to be looking, updates to be that direction. And my optimization was, I don't need to change this if you know, my forward hasn't, the way I'm like moving my stick, or sorry, if my stick hasn't changed, I don't need to do this change. So I was skipping that. But the thing that was happening was, if your stick became 0, I wasn't resetting the way you're looking to be the way you're facing. It just was like sticking. Like, for example, if I flick the stick away from where I'm looking, and my character only has time to like interpolate towards facing that way, like 10% of the way, and then I let go of the stick, my target rotation wouldn't become where I was facing, but it also, or my target rotation would stay the way I had been pushing the stick, but my character wouldn't complete the turn. And then when I let go of the stick, my target facing direction wouldn't be set to where I'm currently facing. So that was a bug. I don't know why I'm going so deep into this issue. Hat roll flow, that is in the hat shop. Once you've unlocked all the hats, I needed to ensure there's feedback for I need to make sure you get feedback from the hat roll machine saying like, oh, you already did it, you got all the hats already, so that players aren't confused and aren't trying to like spend money. Ooh. All hats unlocked. It shows that, and then if you hit it, the machine says, oop, fucked up, all hats are already unlocked. And so like you know, like there's no way you can miss it. Yeah, that's an easy thing. Switching to sampling of a texture instead of using math for noise where possible. For the longest time in my project, I've had this noise shader function that's just a block of math. It's just like 10 lines of like hash this, multiply that, lerp that, plus this. And it's like, I think I counted up once and it was around 50 instructions to get this, to take vector 3, you know, or a float 3 or whatever it is in shader language, and turn it into a noise value, you know, a procedural value between 0 and 1 that interpolates smoothly over an infinite plane. That's what noise is. And the function was great. It worked everywhere. I still use it in a couple places where precision and like getting the exact noise that I had tweaked for is really important. Like the paint, the edge of paint is like very dependent on getting just the right noise value. And so I couldn't make this change, but I made a new optimized version of it that takes global texture of noise instead of using this function. So it's one texture call every time I use noise. I think this is the one I use. This is the texture I use. And it's this one. The important thing is that it's seamless, so that it, like I said about the other noise, is that it can be used over an infinite plane. You can give it any position and it will give you a valid noise position. If you sample it infinite times along a line, it should always be smooth and never like jump. So I don't actually think this is gonna win me back much. Like it might reduce rendering time slightly. I think I was mostly, where was I mostly using this? Cheap noise. I can bring this over. Yeah, so I was using it in the water, I was using it on the pipes. It's not really like that big of a win, I would say. But maybe. I mean, there is like this map potentially has most of the screen being water, and the aquarium has like a good amount of the screen being water at any given time. So maybe it was a win. That's everything. I think that's about everything for the overworld. There's like little stuff. That's the big stuff. So I enabled HDR. There's like a checkbox on the camera in the Unity camera component that enables HDR, and I realized that I didn't have it on for some reason. I turned it on, and that created a few bugs where like somewhere in a shader I didn't like clamp a value between 0 and 1, so I was getting an alpha value that was, you know, greater than 1, and that would make things glow apparently. Let's see if I can make it happen, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Plant, opaque, no coal. Let's do like times 10. Guess that's kind of what it was. The thing to take away from this is that, let me do plus 10 actually, or I'll do like plus 1.3. The thing to take away from this is that if your HDR is on and your numbers are above 1, then you're gonna get something that's not white. So you need to make sure that you're clamping things to be only as high as 1. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's alpha. It's possible that I didn't understand the underlying issue and I just fixed the problem. Like I fixed the symptom of the problem that I didn't understand. Yeah. Huh. I really want to go back and dig through it right now to figure out what happened. Oh, I think I actually have pictures of this that I can show. Here was one of them. The sea here is just supposed to be like raw blue, and it was not, obviously. And here was the other one. And here's what's happening actually. The bloom shader that I was using, before I was using HDR, apparently the bloom shader would receive, you know, a clamped 0 to 1 value for the brightness at 1 pixel. But when the bloom shader got this like HDR busted like way above 1 value, it was, you know, I was just scaling the bloom effect so that the radius, the intensity value of the bloom was just like straight being multiplied to that like higher than 1 value, which gives you this like weird glow, like super far away from maybe even 1 pixel, where it's like a higher than 1 brightness value per pixel. So that was weird. Yeah, and that's everything. That's all the stuff I did this week. I feel like I'm getting really close, but I wish the Hollywood stuff was going faster. I want to try to finish a first pass of the interiors and exterior today. I certainly want to get a block out of the castle done, and I would like to do at least one successful test of the light baking stuff I talked about, where each interior has its own lighting. And then I would like to just like get some shapes, just block in some shapes for what's at the entrance, and maybe I won't get to what's over there, but we'll see. That's the stuff I want to do today. I think I'm just gonna go into a work session. Like I'm just gonna work on the game anyway once I get off stream. So I think it's fine if I continue into a work session. Yeah. So that said, I'm just gonna stop the stream for a second, pop right back on, and then move into the work session. So be right back.